Right, so exploration geologist Jonathan Hainsworth was one of the South Africans evacuated from Sudan. He traveled to Sudan for an early stage gold exploration project in the Red Sea state. He joins us now via Zoom for more on the experience. Jonathan, good evening. Thank you for your time on the SABC. Welcome back home.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
How are you feeling upon touching on home soil? How was your flight back home? Walk us through that experience.
Well, to start with, it was quite hectic. We initially, well, luckily for us, the group of people that I was with, there were 4 of us, we were stationed in Port Sudan. And we only really had fighting break out in the beginning days of the current war. And we initially wanted to stay in and wait it out because we were told by our locals that these sort of things blow over relatively quickly in Sudan. So it's not it's quite a regular occurrence. But obviously now the situation escalated and we decided we needed to get out. But by that time, all the airports were closed and there was no way to get out. And through a lot of discussions with all different organizations, we finally got told that there are ships being taken from Port Sudan to Saudi Arabia, and that we would need to go to the Port Sudan, the Maritime Club, go and hand our passports to the Saudi officials, and then from there, they will assign you to a boat. And that was the toughest part because we handed our passports into these people we've never met before, and they held them for 48 hours, and we didn't know where they were, if they'd been processed, had we gotten the stamps. But eventually, after the long wait, we got told that we will be going on a boat with a whole bunch of other nationals, a lot of Kenyans and a couple of British and Australian people. And then we took the 14-hour journey across the Red Sea on a Saudi Arabian warship, which was quite an experience in itself, which was, I don't think I'll ever probably go on one of those boats again in my life. And the people, the main thing was that the people on the boat, the Saudi military personnel, were all very friendly and welcoming with us. They welcomed us with chocolates as we got on the boat. They gave us sleeping bags to sleep on in the ship because obviously it was packed with 50 people. They gave the accommodation in the ship to people that had small children and elderly people with them. And then after that, we disembarked at the naval port in Saudi. And we were greeted there by a lot of military personnel, and of course the South African embassy officials greeted us, and they assisted us to ensure that all of us arrived. They helped us get through the customs, and then from there we were taken to a hotel, which was all paid for by the Sudanese government, which was incredible. We got to stay there for a couple of hours, just at least have a shower because we hadn't showered in 3 days. And then from there we got onto an airplane, flew to Dubai, and then had a connection there waited there for 9 hours, and then flew to South Africa and arrived this morning. So yeah, all in all, it was a tough experience, but luckily for us, we didn't go through what some South Africans we had met had gone through that actually came from Khartoum. Some of the stories we heard were quite harrowing, to be honest. So we're all glad that no South Africans were hurt, and everyone is on their way to get home safely, and all of us are now home safely.
Absolutely, John. I mean, you speak about the evacuation plan. I can only imagine how tired you are after this, this past couple of weeks. I think we want to also understand, based on some of the stories that you heard from some of the other South Africans who were stuck in Khartoum. I mean, what were some of the challenges that they had to deal with in terms of the heat, in terms of travel docs, etc., which you say you were spared from at least because you were in Port Sudan?
Yeah, there was a group of people that were with us, and 3 guys, and their stories were quite heavy. They were stationed at the airport itself, but they weren't there during the start of the conflict. They were at home. But I mean, it got to a point where they had no water, no food left, and they had to go to houses, or not, it's in an apartment building, so they had to go to apartments where people had fled and then get food from those empty houses and provisions for themselves. And eventually they could get out with a tuk-tuk, which they traveled through dodgy back roads through Khartoum, and eventually they got to an area where buses were traveling. But in saying that, they had to leave their passports because their passports were in a safe at the airport. And when they were in Port Sudan, they had to get special documentation to from the South African embassy in South Africa to just get them through, because they wouldn't accept just plain copies of their passport. But eventually they got their documents and we were all together. They had a bit of trouble in Saudi Arabia as well getting through customs, but the embassy officials of South Africa really helped them out nicely there, and they got them through quite smoothly.
Jono,
so yeah, for them it was a real challenging experience.
How were you able to stay in touch? I mean, we heard of reports suggested that the network was out. I can imagine just the 4 South Africans that you were traveling with. I mean, what gave you hope during this process, whether you were going to leave or not?
So when the internet went down, it was probably down properly for 3 whole days. There was no communication. But because my work is very remote, I stay in the desert for 2 weeks at a time with no communication other than a satellite phone, which we had on hand. So we had 3 satellite phones with us because we have a couple of backups. So with the satellite phone, we were able to check in to one of our company's officials, and then he would then send a message on a WhatsApp group where all of our loved ones were on, and they could stay updated in that regard. And we were even able to use the satellite phone while we were on the ship traveling to Saudi Arabia. So we were fortunate in that regard compared to other people that had no internet whatsoever.
Upon landing, what was the first meal that you consumed? In terms of what happens from here and to for you now, what was that process look like for you as you settled back on home soil?
Well, I had a braai here at home with my family. We had some chicken wings on the fire, and then obviously I had to have a couple of beers with it because it was quite a rough experience. But yeah, for now it's just a matter of, waiting a couple of days or weeks just to see how the situation in Sudan pans out, because us as a team, we really want to get back into Port Sudan as soon as possible, because we're really excited about the work we're doing there. And we've grown very close to the Sudanese people we work with, and we know for them now it's going to be really tough. So for us to get back there, it keeps a lot of people employed, and we can help them out in that regard. So yeah, we just really hope things even out for the country and we can get back in there.
Perhaps before we let you go, you speak about, having a good rapport with the locals and the community in Sudan. What's their condition upon leaving? The last time you spoke to them, I mean, how are they faring? What alternatives do they have as they assess the dynamics of the way the wars unfold, the conflicts unfolding?
So we engage with a lot of people in Sudan that reside in Port Sudan. So for them initially now it was okay because the war wasn't concentrated in Port Sudan. The army had taken control of the area and there was no conflict. But now that a lot of people are fleeing from Khartoum, they are starting to come into Port Sudan, and Port Sudan already is quite overpopulated already. So a lot of people coming in is just going to drive the price of fuel, of food, of water up drastically. And, people don't have the money there to afford to have these increases imposed on them so quickly. So we just hope that they can stave it out and hopefully, like I said, things come in order and the country stabilizes quickly.
Jono, thank you for your time here on the SABC. I know it's been a grueling few weeks, but you've made the time to chat to us, give us insight, a personified perspective of your harrowing experience, and perhaps what's in plan for you from here. And to enjoy time with your family, enjoy the braai. Hopefully we'll catch up with you very soon. Jonathan Hainsworth is one of these survivors who have been evacuated from Sudan. An exploration geologist arrived on the first flight just a few hours ago, back on home soil. This as conflict contentions in Sudan escalate. Again, thank you to him for making time to chat to us about his harrowing experience.